lucid dreaming over the mountain under mystic spells, meditating on the stars. Hear me, promise a warning, fear thee. The darkness coming, mesmerized under restless skies. Be gone to
I have Mr. Andre Comeau with me today. Andre is one of the original cast members of MTV's Real World, and recently went back to the Loft for the Real World Homecoming. It has to be interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about that. He's been a member of bands like Rain Dance and River Rouge over the years, and Andre now has his very own solo band and a new single out called Clean Break with video, and an album of the same name coming later this year. And man, Andre, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Very, very cool. Yeah, we got to talk about the Real World, of course. The kind of the start of it, for people knowing who you are, getting you out there. For the audience that's not aware of who Andre was at that time, tell us a little bit about that. Of course, one of the first reality shows, 7 people in that New York City loft, all different personalities, races, and ideologies, and just all of a big mix of personalities. What personality were you at that time? What kind of person were you?
Well, okay, so the Real World, the first season of Real World in 1992 was the very first modern day reality TV show. And, I was very much as I am now, a musician, a long-haired rock musician. And at the time, 1992, my hair was a little longer, a little darker. But, I was, that was I was basically just myself, and I was a rocker, and I was trying to, make my mark as a rock musician in the New York area. My band, Rain Dance at the time, was from Detroit and had moved to the New York area 1 year prior to my moving into the Loft in New York.
Wow. And of course, 30 years later, you go back to the Loft. Everybody's 30 years older.
Yeah.
Do you come as the same person? Still,
of course. There was no pretense. There was nothing. There's nothing that's fabricated. I mean, I am right. Who I am, and so yes, I'm a little older, a little wiser. I'm married with a 4-year-old child now. So those things are different. I'm probably a lot more mature, a lot more, I like to think, improved, but I'm the same person I was. So, it just so happens that, circumstance, had it that that I was playing rock music again at the time, because there was many years that went by that I wasn't playing rock, and I was playing sort of a more acoustic based folk music, which I was doing with my band River Rouge for the better part of 15 years in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and that's it's really great to see you venture out in those directions too, and be so musical. It's really great, because I think a lot of people, because it was that first reality TV show, you become a character more. It's you, but people think of you as a character in a TV show.
That's right. It's everyone just assumes that what they're viewing on TV is a TV character. So yes, there, many of my personality traits, my characteristics became caricatures, so that, and that's just sort of, that happens in editing and just in the overall sort of the way things are portrayed. Sometimes, when you distort a reality through editing or through any number of ways, it changes the perception. So things become exaggerated, things become maybe a little more focused on. And so, yeah, those things do become more of a caricature. And it's funny how that happens. Just the slightest alteration of what we how we behave really magnifies certain aspects of someone's personality and changes the actual reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And in music too. You throw a different music behind a certain scene or a certain picture look, you get a whole different perspective on it.
Certainly.
Yeah. How did you initially get chosen for the show? Was it through your music at that time?
Well, I wouldn't say it was directly through the music. However, I apparently what they were doing was going around in New York. The casting took place mainly in New York, and they were going around to where young people were working, record companies and magazines and places that, young people, hip people were kind of congregating. My sister worked for EMI Records in Manhattan, and one of her friends recommended me to the casting director, who apparently gave her a picture and said, "Call this guy." They called, asked me if I wanted to participate in meeting the director and producers to a documentary style television show that'll air on MTV that would feature my life and my music. So I jumped. I was 20 years old, 21 when they filmed, and I jumped at the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit different than you had imagined, wasn't it?
Oh, well, certainly, it was all new, right. I had no idea what to expect. Honestly, we were not given any sort of, we were not given any kind of warning as to what to expect. And obviously the loft was gorgeous, so much, it was a 4,000 square foot loft in Soho, an amazing place in an amazing city. And then, just as unprepared we were for the actual living situation, the surroundings and whom we were living with, I was just as unprepared with the result, because we were not shown any of the footage until the very last week that we lived there. They showed us the first episode. And at that point I knew how different it was, because, we had so little experience with how things would be edited. And I should say, nothing that we ever participated in was fabricated out of, whole cloth. There was no, there was never a point where they said, do this, say that. Right. But as I said previously, the way that things are edited changes the meaning. Even slight difference can make a huge outcome difference. So that it was at that point that I realized, wow, this is going to be crazy. And what have I gotten myself into? Given that, 1992, Nirvana and these very counterculture artists were at the very top of the chart. So to be so closely associated with something corporate and safe as an MTV show that was edited, it may have been shot like a documentary, but edited more like a soap opera.
Right.
So to be so closely associated with that was probably not the best vehicle for a rock band at the time. Nowadays, geez, people would, give a limb for that kind of exposure, and right. and it really does equal instant stardom. But at the time, it was a very dicey situation, and it proved to be difficult for me and my band members.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine so. That was a whole different time. Now, your music was featured quite a bit in that initial the initial Real World show. Tell me about the new one, Homecoming. Is your music featured in that as well?
It is. It is. I brought my acoustic guitar. I write all my songs on acoustic guitar, and I play acoustic guitar, daily. It's just what I do around the house, and it's I love acoustic music, always have, and so that's something that I did back in the original season. I brought an acoustic, but I would say it's even more so now. I mean, really, that's it's just what I do. I'm always fiddling around on the guitar, and that's where I do. I write, I create with it, and it's what I do to just relax and how I spend my time. So definitely, the new show, the new season of Real World Homecoming, definitely featured a lot of those songs of me just sort of playing guitar, and I would play songs for the cast, especially when they would perhaps meet the situation, and when they fit a certain, when the lyrics fit any sort of the topics that were going on at the time. But it also featured some of my music in the scenes and in the background. I gave the music supervisors some of my most recent album, which was released in 2020, called Wrong Within. And that, some of the songs like Firebird and Out of Control were featured on the show as part of the placement, music placement. And then the new song, Clean Break, they showed some of the video and some of the and had some of that track in the placement as well.
That's great. That's great to see that they're promoting your music and using that music in the show like that is that's got to be rewarding. Yeah,
it certainly is. It's a good thing that it's I work in music publishing and in placing, music licensing, music supervision. So yeah, I have relationships with these music supervisors to begin with, but I wasn't using any of that sort of angling to get my songs in there. They had actually asked for it and wanted to use quite a bit of music in that way.
Yeah, and it's great. It makes it much more personal, and we get to know Andre of the real world, a little deeper than maybe the other people in the show. Do you ever draw inspiration from that experience when you're writing, like for the new album? Do you ever take those situations that you encountered from the show and some of the ideas that you discussed? Does that ever go into your writing at all?
Sure. I would definitely say that, all of my songs, even the ones that I write in character, all of those songs are based in, real personal experience. And even the ones that, as I said, even the ones that are maybe, they don't necessarily reflect how I feel as myself, but they may reflect an emotion that I might be feeling at the moment. I would say that, a good example of that on the new album would be one of the songs that's it's called "Don't Follow the Lights," and it's basically something sort of a cautionary tale to be careful of what I guess I'll quote Led Zeppelin and say, all that glitters is not necessarily gold. So
right.
And so that is the essence of what I'm saying in that track as well.
Cool. now tell me about this record. I've heard you talk a little bit about it in other forums. There's you draw from a lot of different styles. You've done the folk, you've done the heavier rock. So we're gonna get an amalgamation of all of that stuff, aren't we?
Well, you definitely are. I mean,
Cool.
I would say that the new album definitely, as opposed to the last record, Wrong Within, which was more just sort of meat and potatoes, straight up the middle, blues-based rock. The new one has a little more of a modern rock edge, and I draw from some of my more perhaps even punk rock influences. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, so very much influenced by the music that came out in those decades. Some of the greatest music ever, as well as I'm a big fan of older music as well, 60s, 50s, even some 40s. I like to consider myself a sort of a student of music, and I really love all eras of popular music. I would say that the new album definitely draws from some of those some of my punk influences, some of my more acoustic influences, and but it's a rock record, undoubtedly.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're kind of a student of the game kind of thing. Yeah, and that makes me think of do you have a formal music education, or are you self-taught, or what's your beginnings?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, so I come from a really musical family. My mom's family, her 7 brothers and sisters had a band that was on Capitol Records, and they were on all of the variety shows of the day: Ed Sullivan, Mike Douglas, David Frost, all of those kind of variety shows. I grew up on tour with her band and all of my aunts and uncles.
What's the name? What's the name?
They were the Primo family. That's her maiden name, Primo. Okay. The Primo People was the name of the band when they released their record on Capitol. They were touring with the likes of Robert Goulet and Doris Day and those kind of legacy sort of acts. Those are my earliest memories of being on tour with my extended family. When it came to my own musical journey, the first album I ever bought that I asked for was an Elvis Presley record. I think I was 5 years old. I was a huge Elvis Presley fan, and cried for 3 solid days when he died in 1977.
Yeah.
Crushed as my hero, expired.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter went to, sort of the rock music of the time in the 70s, big fan of Kiss. I had that poster that you're wearing on your t-shirt there.
Didn't we all?
My first concert I ever saw was Kiss with Makeup before they ever took it off. That was the first show in Detroit at Comeau Hall.
Oh yeah.
Those were, and I'm lucky that I got to see, every band I ever wanted to see in the 80s. I really did, my friends and I, we really did see pretty much every show that came around. And so, when it came to learning music, it wasn't a matter of, do you want to learn an instrument? It was, which instrument do you want to learn? And that started with piano at 6. Took piano lessons for a couple of years, then went to drums at 9. And then went to guitar at 13, and I've been playing guitar ever since.
Wow. Do you ever go back and play piano and drums?
Little bit. I enjoy playing drums just for fun. And I played in a in a punk sort of post-punk band here in Los Angeles for a time. I'm not as proficient on piano, but I do like to tinker on it and write melodies and sort of, play a little bit. I know a few songs on piano. I'm not, it's definitely the kind of thing that I'm a little intimidated with piano, as, players are just so good at piano, and I can't do what they can do. So.
Now you write on acoustic guitar most of the time, right?
Right.
What is the writing process like for you? Do you have to be in a certain headspace? Can you write while you're, riding the bus, or,
Yes. I'll tell you, I got some good advice through one of my early producers. And that advice was, write everything down and never throw anything away. And I've taken that to heart. It's really the best advice you can have. And when I say write everything down, nowadays we live in a digital world. I record everything on my phone now.
Right.
And anytime something pops into my head, I hit the record function on the note taking. I use voice memos, and I try to keep everything that I think of. I'm speaking about mostly lyrical ideas, or but it's anything, and it can be anything. It could be a phrase. It could be an idea for a song, like a concept, or it could be a melody, kind of thing. But it's and it also could be a riff on guitar. If I'm sitting around and I play something, a chord progression or a riff that I find is interesting, or that I want to remember to work on at a later time. And a lot of the times I don't even, because I'll go back and do some recon and download everything and listen to it. I'm like, wow, I have no recollection of that. I mean, that happened a lot more when I was doing a little more of the chemicals than that I do now. But I'm pretty good about that now that, I'm pretty much clean and sober. And so I don't forget things or have those momentary lapses that I used to. And that's so that's really what it is that I keep everything and I never throw anything away. And you'd be surprised at how often an old idea comes back around, and I'm like, I can use that here. I can use that as a bridge. I can use that as an intro or the riff, or even something as minor as, wow, that sparks a different idea.
Right.
And there is no one size fits all. Everything, use it all. Use everything and that's been my method.
Pretty great. With streaming and digital, you're a child of the 70s and 80s, like I am. I used to sit in front of the turntable and read the sleeve, and I know who mastered every album.
That's right.
Who they thanked, produced every band member's family. It was like, that was what was really enticing about the whole thing for me. I really do miss that. Now streaming and digital, has its advantages for sure. But that ebb and flow of a full album, to put that on and drop the needle on the first one, it's a journey. It's very rare that you would drop it on a track and leave after it's done. So it was a journey. There was an ebb and flow to those older records. When you made a record, it was, a beginning to an end. When you made this record, did you have that kind of old school frame of mind, or is it just 10 separate songs?
No, always. I'm a fan of albums, and I'm always trying to create an album, even as outdated of the concept as it is. I love albums, and that's what I try to, I'm always working on the larger expression of the album. having said that, I do know that nowadays it's really about the single, it's about the song, and so I try to keep that in mind in terms of like, because I've got actually this new record has quite a few singles that I want to make videos for and put out as a single, and a few songs that I have no intention on pushing as their more album cuts. But I love the album, and as you were saying, the scouring the liner notes and reading the lyrics and learning all of the peripheral players, mastering the who did the artwork, who did the band thank. I used to know all of that stuff, and I would study that stuff, and I miss it desperately. I mean, it's an aspect of our business that I think is sadly overlooked, and what it did was really gave the fan a deeper appreciation for the music that laid within, and I think that sadly that's largely been lost. It was another thing that really felt the fans felt connected to the artist and the art a little more when there was just so much more to know about. They would know those lyrics, they would know everything about the album, where it was recorded, when it was recorded, who managed the band. I used to know, we would know all of that stuff. Anything that I knew that Peter Criss played Pearl drums and guitars because they want the best, and that's what the liner notes used to say. And
absolutely,
it's too bad that is missing from music culture.
It is. It really is, because I miss it too. And we're exactly the same, my friend. I did the same exact thing. George Marino was a guy that was just, I knew who that was. I didn't really know what he did at, in the mastering, but he mastered everything I listened to. And it was, I had read his name on every record.
Right.
I work with some younger people now, and we play the radio around where we work, and a song comes on, they don't even know who's singing it, who's playing on it. They may know the name of the band so they can look it up to play it again, but they don't even know who's in the band, and that's just, man, it's just sad to me, and it's disrespectful as well.
Well, it's also it's very indicative of the how music has lost its value.
Mm-hmm.
So much of that value that we used to pride ourselves on our music collection, the physical collection of our music, and now people, now it's just background, and they don't really they don't pay as close attention to it, and it's when I say value, I'm not necessarily talking about the monetary value. I'm talking about the emotional impact. Yes. I'm talking about the connection that you felt with music, which kind of brought me closer to my career in music publishing, is what I do in the daytime. I work for a music publisher, and IP, intellectual property, is incredibly important to me. Music licensing, music supervision. It's one of the only avenues now that promotes music, and getting your songs synced to film and TV, even advertising, legitimizes your music, and has that sort of gives it a deeper impact, in many instances, a more emotional impact, when coupled with a scene that means something. And that's, it's definitely been sort of a big shift in how our music is consumed now in this time.
Yeah.
But you got to go where I can't change the tide. And
Right.
back when I was coming up, I mean, you didn't necessarily want your stuff associated with an advertisement, with
Right.
a product that would be considered selling out. Well, nowadays the goal is to sell out.
Right. Right.
That's the goal.
Yep. Yep. And it is good. It's good for, subsidizing that, the income of the artist, for sure. I think I just talked to a guy named Dan Murphy from, he's actually got a band now, All Good Things. They have a huge hit, that's in a video game. And they were doing all this music as studio musicians, and it got licensed, and it was in these games, and they were marketed as a kind of a band, and people were asking when an album's coming out. Well, they're really not even a band. So now they are a band because it was in demand. Do you think that, you're right in the heart of that business? I see a lot of bands that, 99% are due to fail. It's just a fact that, guys that are forming a band and picking up guitars and writing and playing songs aren't going to make it. It's a very small percentage. Do you think that that newer bands might explore licensing to film and television? I don't think that's a thought for the young band in the garage to say, hey, we're going to write for a Kraft cheese commercial. It's just not a thing. They want to be rock stars and big stages and household names and do the rock thing.
Sure.
So there's so many more avenues. Do you think that should be explored by the younger bands?
Well, I think that a better idea would be to get with a licensing company who've already got these relationships in place, because the music business, more so than other businesses, it really is about the relationship that these people have with music supervisors, with the music departments at these companies, because they are gatekeepers. And when I say that, that means that they get inundated with bands, artists, musicians, everyone from every angle. And their whole thing is to just sort of weed a lot of that stuff out. Right. So really what you want to do is get with a publisher or a music licensing company that have these relationships already in place. The people I do business with, most of them I've known for more than a dozen years. And so they trust me, and they know when they ask me for something, they know that it's going to be vetted, that I'm not going to be giving them stuff that we don't have a legitimate copyright or the permission to use, because so much of that it's a very sticky situation, especially in today with the advent of sampling and repurposing of music that's been previously released. Right. And now they've repurposed a riff on a song that, so much of that is just, it's very complicated. And so, it really is based on this business is based on the relationship that these people have with the music departments and the music supervisors. So that would be the best advice. I mean, you can do it yourself. They're not impossible to reach, but realize that it's a long game. It is a long game. Don't expect that you're going to be able to get their ear the first time you go to them, or even the fifth time you go to them, because these people are, as I mentioned, they're constantly inundated with stuff, and their whole purpose is to just, keep that tunnel vision and to not even pay attention to the noise that goes on around them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's that is the behind the scenes complicated portion of the music world that not too many think about. It's pretty interesting.
Well, if you ever, if you ever hear an interview with a music supervisor, they'll tell you the exact same thing. Often one of the basic general questions that they get is, how do I get my song placed on your show? And they will tell you, go through me, go through someone like me, music publisher, music licensing company. That we are the in to most artists, because that is how they get. I spoon feed the music supervisor, and that's how they need to be serviced.
Yeah, you're basically the screening process. You listen to it all, so they don't have to.
Right. Well, they listen to it too, but it definitely comes through me, as I'm doing the vetting. I'm doing the curating.
Yeah, that's great. You got to hear a whole bunch of stuff, which is really interesting too. And that's what I love about what I do is, I have all this music hitting me constantly, so I get to hear all of these new artists and legendary artists, and all this new music, and it's a wonderful thing. I love filling my life with sound like that. It's fantastic. So the album, Clean Break, when's it coming out? How are we going to release music? Are we going to get another single?
The album comes out on September 10th. September 9th is the album release party at the Viper Room in Hollywood. We're going to play a show for the album release. And it will be largely a digital release. I guess we'll probably do a physical release, but I'll tell you, it's kind of crazy. The last time, I printed up CDs. I don't know. I know more people who don't have a CD player now than people who do. And right now I'm talking on my MacBook. There's no CD drive on my MacBook. I have another MacBook that does have a CD drive. So if I do get a CD, I do have a way to play it, but my main computer doesn't have a CD drive anymore.
Nope.
And so CDs have now even gone the way of the dinosaur. Vinyl is, of course, a wonderful medium that I grew up on, and we both love the giant artwork, all of the ephemera that comes with it. It's great, but incredibly expensive to produce, and not only that, incredibly difficult to ship. Right. And all of the complications that come from vinyl, they're great, but you can't leave it in your car overnight. Right. So there's just so many things. There's so many things that come with a vinyl release that, very complicated too. And I would love, there's nothing more that I want than to put this new album on vinyl. It's the kind of album that I think would fly on vinyl. I think that it would be awesome. But again, the complications that surround it, it's very difficult to circle that square and to really commit to a vinyl release. It's just the reality is the cost, the difficulty, the shipping, and then on top of it, 1 out of every 100 music listeners might have a working record player that they're okay, so maybe the record player is working, but the receiver isn't, or it is working, but they got to replace the stylus. There's just so many things that just make it a very complicated issue.
Totally.
The safe bet is that it's, we release everything digitally, and we'll see if the market demands a physical release as well.
Excellent. Do you have the band that plays on it? Is that going to be your touring band as well?
Oh yes, absolutely. No, I've been playing with my band. Okay, so the core of the band is my drummer and producer Darren Elpant. Darren and I have been working together for many years, and we recorded the both the last album and the new album at his studio in Silver Lake, Los Angeles. He's got a great recording studio, a professional studio that, you know, he records other bands in as well. But, you know, we are the sort of, you know, passion rock project. And this album, we got a new bass player, a guy named Gary Wicks. He's an amazing musician. And also this album where, you know, as opposed to the last album, which was largely a power rock trio, this new one, we're using the services of a second guitar player, a guy named Steve Dawson. All of my band are East Coast expats now living in Los Angeles. The Darren and Steve are both from New York, and I you know, spent a lot of time in New York as well. And Gary's from Boston, so you know, we definitely intend on touring the East Coast, and you know, getting out there and doing some dates in the Midwest and East Coast. I did some dates in Texas and the Southwest earlier, a couple months back. And obviously, being that we're based here in LA, you know, we'll be doing the West Coast as well. But the goal is to hit the East Coast as it's, you know, home, and an adopted home for many yeyears. So
that's cool. Yeah, I'm in Chicago, so you mentioned Midwest. That's good to hear.
Yeah. No, I mean, I spent the coldest winter of my life in Chicago in 1995. I lived there with my girlfriend for a time, and man, that was the coldest winter of my life.
It gets pretty chilly. Yeah.
And I'm from Detroit. I am stranger. I'm no stranger to cold, but Chicago had the edge, man. That the wind coming off of Lake Michigan.
That's what it is. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah, I used to live right by Lake Michigan, you know, a few blocks in, and everything freezes.
Oh my God, Fargo's got nothing on, you know, Minnesota's got nothing on Chicago in terms of, or at least at that time.
You'll have to come back and experience it again.
Love to.
Very cool.
City, great time.
Very cool. And everybody needs to check you out. Andre Comeau Music. That's Comeau, not like Perry. COMEAU. AndreComeauMusic.com. And you can find out everything you need to know and purchase what you need. And man, Andre, it has been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Thank you, Scott. The pleasure was mine.
Awesome. I hope to see you on the road.
Okay, great. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.